The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m., 3 laughing emojis trailing behind 6 words that would change everything. Blind date tomorrow. Trust us, bro. This is a fictional, dramatized story inspired by everyday moments. Marcus Whitmore stared at his phone screen, thumb hovering over the delete button, already knowing he wouldn't press it. His friends from the old construction crew had been trying to get him back into dating for 2 years now. Ever since the accident, ever since everything stopped making sense. He'd said no 17 times. This would be 18, except the babysitter was already confirmed for Saturday night, and his daughter Lily had overheard him on the phone earlier that week, saying he was tired of being alone. 7-year-olds remember everything, especially the sad things their parents try to hide. Saturday came with that specific kind of autumn cold that makes you pull your jacket tighter at stoplights. Marcus dropped Lily at his sister's house, ignored the knowing look Teresa gave him, and drove to the address his friend Jordan had sent. Riverside Bistro. Nice enough place. The kind with cloth napkins and candles on every table, where entrees cost what he used to make in half a day's work before the promotion to site supervisor. He parked between a BMW and a Tesla, suddenly aware that his truck still had drywall dust in the bed and a crack across the windshield he kept meaning to fix. Jordan and 2 other guys from the crew, Devin and Malik, were already at the bar, drinks in hand, phones out. That should have been the first warning. The second was the way they looked at him when he walked in, that specific combination of guilt and gleeful anticipation that meant something was very wrong. "There he is," Jordan said, too loud, slapping Marcus on the shoulder with too much force. "My man, Marcus. Tonight's the night, brother. We found you someone special." "Where is she?" Marcus asked, scanning the restaurant. His palms were already damp. He'd forgotten how to do this, how to be the version of himself that was interesting to someone new. "She's running a little late," Devin said, exchanging a glance with Malik that made Marcus's jaw tighten. "Should be here any minute." Marcus ordered a beer he wouldn't finish and tried to remember the last time he'd been on an actual date. 4 years? 5. Rachel had been gone for 3 years now, the drunk driver's attorney still sending settlement paperwork that Marcus couldn't bring himself to read. Before that, there'd been 2 years of hospitals and clinical trials and hope that turned to dust in his hands. Dating felt like something from another life, from back when he was a different person who didn't check his daughter's breathing 3 times every night. If you're drawn to stories where the quietest voices carry the most power, stay with me. There's more to come. "So, what's her name?" Marcus asked, watching Jordan's expression shift into something that looked almost like remorse. Elena Vasquez. She's really something, man. You're going to remember this night." The way he said it made Marcus's stomach drop. But then the door opened, and he forgot how to process warning signs entirely. She was late 20s, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a way that showed the delicate silver hearing aids curving behind both ears. She wore a navy dress that was simple and perfect, and she moved through the restaurant like she was used to people staring but had decided long ago not to care. Her eyes swept the room once, landed on Marcus, and something in her expression shuddered closed even as she walked toward him. Behind him, Jordan whispered, "Oh, this is going to be good." And Marcus understood with sudden, crushing clarity exactly what kind of joke his friends thought they were playing. Elena reached their table, and Marcus stood, his chair scraping too loud against the hardwood floor. Her eyes met his, and he saw it all there. The same realization, the same sick understanding. She'd been set up too. Someone had told her this would be a real date, and she'd gotten dressed and driven here and walked into a room full of men who thought her deafness was a punchline. Her hands moved before Marcus could find words. Graceful, precise, asking a question he recognized instantly because Rachel had asked him the same thing the first time they met, back when they were both 19 and stupid and thought love could conquer anything. Do you sign? Marcus's hands answered before his brain caught up. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know they were... Her expression cracked open into something that might have been surprise or might have been the beginning of tears. Behind him, Jordan's voice. Wait, what the hell? Did he just... Marcus turned, his hands still, his voice quiet in the way that made construction sites go silent when he was about to fire someone. You set her up. You thought this would be funny. Man, we just thought... Devin started, but Marcus was already moving, taking his jacket from the back of his chair, looking at Elena with a question in his eyes that she answered with a small nod. We're leaving, Marcus said, and then he signed it too, his hands remembering the shape of communication that had kept him tethered to Rachel through 18 months of ICU silence when her brain injury had stolen her voice, but not her ability to understand. Would you like to have dinner somewhere else? Somewhere without an audience? Elena's hands moved fast, anger making her signing sharp. They told me you were a widower who'd been struggling. They said you were shy and sweet and needed someone patient. I should have known better. They told me you were someone I'd never forget. Marcus signed back, ignoring the way Jordan was standing now, confusion replacing his earlier amusement. They were right about that part. She smiled, just a little, just enough. Her hands asked, Where should we go? There's a diner 3 blocks from here. The coffee's terrible, but they make the best apple pie in the city, and it's quiet enough to have a real conversation. They left together, Marcus holding the door, Jordan calling after them with something that sounded like an apology but felt like an excuse. The autumn air bit at their faces, and Elena pulled a wool coat from her bag, Marcus helping her into it without thinking, the gesture automatic and old-fashioned and earning him another one of those small smiles that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. The diner was called Rosie's, the kind of place with red vinyl booths and a waitress who'd been working there since the Carter administration. They slid into a corner booth and Marcus ordered 2 slices of apple pie and 2 coffees, then signed the order to Elena, checking if she wanted something else. She shook her head, her hands telling him she trusted his judgment, which felt like more than it should after 30 minutes of knowing someone. I need to apologize, Marcus signed, the movement slower now, more careful. Those aren't really my friends anymore. They were once, but I've been distant since my wife died, and I think they thought they were helping in some broken, stupid way. Elena's expression softened. Her hands asked, Your wife was deaf? Hearing, but she had a traumatic brain injury. She couldn't speak for the last year of her life, but she could understand signing. I learned it in 3 months because I couldn't stand the idea of her being alone in the silence. I'm sorry, Elena signed, and Marcus saw that she meant it, that she understood the specific weight of losing someone to inches when you'd been promised miles. I have a daughter, Marcus continued. Lily, she's 7. She knows about 60 signs now because I kept teaching her after Rachel died. I couldn't stop. It felt like letting go of the last thing I had. The waitress brought their pie, and they ate in comfortable silence for a moment, Marcus watching the way Elena's shoulders had relaxed, the defensive posture from the restaurant melting into something more real. What do you do? Marcus asked, his hands moving between bites. I'm a children's book illustrator, Elena signed back. Freelance. I work from home mostly, which is good because I don't have to deal with the world's terrible lip-reading skills in meetings. Marcus laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising him. That sounds incredibly peaceful. It's lonely sometimes, Elena admitted, her hands moving slower now, more vulnerable. The deaf community here isn't very large, and hearing people often don't know what to do with me. I exist in this strange middle space where neither side fully claims me. Have you ever loved someone who existed between worlds, teaching you that connection doesn't need sound to be heard? I understand, Elena signed. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Jordan. Dude, we're sorry. We really thought you'd think it was funny. We didn't mean to be cruel. He showed Elena the text, watched her eyebrows rise, her hands moving quick with frustration. They didn't mean to be cruel. What did they think would happen? They thought I'd be uncomfortable. Marcus signed, putting his phone face down on the table. They thought you'd be uncomfortable. They thought we'd both leave embarrassed, and they'd have a story to tell at the next barbecue about the awkward blind date. They didn't consider that we're actual people with actual feelings. But you knew sign language, Elena signed, her expression thoughtful. That changed their entire joke. The joke was always cruel, Marcus replied. Knowing sign language just meant I could tell you I saw you as a person instead of a punchline. They stayed at Rosie's for 3 hours, talking through hands and expressions and the occasional word spoken aloud when Marcus wanted Elena to hear his voice, which she could catch pieces of with her hearing aids turned up and his lips to read. She told him about growing up deaf in a hearing family that loved her but never quite learned to sign fluently. About art school where her professors couldn't understand why she painted sound. About the children's book she was working on about a deaf girl who could hear colors. Marcus told her about construction work and the promotion that meant more money but less time with Lily. About his sister Teresa, who'd been his lifeline after Rachel died. About the guilt he still carried for not being in the car that night. For letting Rachel go to the grocery store alone because he'd been too tired from a double shift. He told her things he hadn't said out loud in years, his hands making confessions easier somehow, the language stripping away the performance of grief and leaving only truth. At 10:30, Rosie herself came over, wiping her hands on her apron. You two need anything else, or are you planning to buy the booth? Marcus looked at Elena, signed the question, watched her smile turn into a laugh. We should probably go, she signed back. But I don't want to. Neither do I, Marcus admitted, both aloud and in sign, wanting her to have both versions of his honesty. They exchanged numbers in the parking lot, Elena's fingers flying across her phone screen, Marcus saving her contact with a small smile that felt like the first real thing he'd done in years. Can I see you again? He asked, his hands careful with the question, aware that he was rusty at this, at wanting something that wasn't just survival. Yes, Elena signed, then spoke aloud, her voice quiet and slightly uncertain in the way of someone who didn't use it often, but was offering it as a gift. Yes, I'd like that. Marcus drove home with the heat turned too high and music he couldn't hear, just bass vibrating through the steering wheel the way Rachel had liked it. He thought about Jordan and Devin and Malik, about the specific cruelty of men who thought other people's dignity was fair game for entertainment. He thought about Elena's hands moving through the air like birds, about the way she'd looked at him when he signed instead of speaking, like he'd given her something precious without knowing its value. His phone rang at 7:15 Sunday morning. Teresa's voice came through heavy with concern. Lily wants to know how your date went. She's been up since 6 asking questions. Marcus found his daughter in Teresa's kitchen, eating cereal and swinging her legs. Was she nice, Daddy? Lily asked, her hands moving through the signs she knew, mixing English and ASL in the way kids do, creating her own language. She was very nice, Marcus said, signing along. Her name is Elena. She's deaf, like Mommy was at the end. But Elena was born deaf, so she's been signing her whole life. Lily's eyes went wide. Can I meet her? Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Maybe, if she wants to meet you. We only had one date, sweetheart. We have to take things slow. But Elena texted him that afternoon. I can't stop thinking about last night. Thank you for seeing me. Marcus replied, Thank you for giving me a chance after that disaster of a setup. Elena, it wasn't a disaster. It was a test. You passed. They texted through the week, long conversations that started with logistics and ended with confessions. Elena told him about her last relationship, a hearing man who'd promised to learn sign language and never did, who'd grown frustrated with repeating himself and eventually just stopped talking to her altogether. Marcus told her about the loneliness of widowhood, about going to bed alone in a house full of memories, about the way Lily sometimes still called for her mother in the middle of the night. Friday evening, Marcus picked Elena up for their second date. She lived in a small house with a garden out front, flowers that were holding on through the early November cold. She'd invited him inside while she finished getting ready, and Marcus stood in her living room looking at the illustrations covering the walls. Children's book art, bright and alive, full of creatures that seemed to exist between reality and dream. "These are incredible," Marcus said when Elena came back down, this time signing and speaking simultaneously, wanting to give her both. "Thank you," she signed back, her hands soft with the compliment. "Most of them will never be published. Publishing is hard when you're deaf. Editors want to talk on the phone. They want Zoom meetings. They don't want to deal with interpreters or typing everything out." "That's their loss," Marcus said, and meant it. They went to an art gallery opening, a friend of Elena's showcasing sculptures made from reclaimed materials. The gallery was loud with people and wine and the kind of laughter that echoed off high ceilings, but Elena moved through it with confidence, introducing Marcus to people who signed and people who didn't, translating effortlessly between worlds. Marcus watched her hands, the way they became more animated when she was excited, more precise when she was making a point, more gentle when she was being kind. Halfway through the evening, a man approached them, someone Marcus recognized with a sinking feeling. Trevor Marsh. They'd worked together 5 years ago, before Trevor got fired for showing up drunk and nearly dropping a steel beam on a teenage apprentice. Trevor looked worse now, bloated and red-faced, his eyes already glassy at 8 p.m. "Marcus Whitmore," Trevor said, too loud, drawing attention. "Long time, man. Who's your friend?" "This is Elena," Marcus said, his voice flat, not signing, not wanting to draw Trevor's attention to that detail. But Trevor's eyes had already caught the hearing aids, the way Elena was watching their lips instead of looking around the room. "Oh, she's deaf? Damn, man, that's rough. How do you even communicate?" Marcus felt Elena stiffen beside him. Her hands moved, asking what Trevor had said, and Marcus's jaw tightened as he signed back, translating the casual cruelty. "Tell her I'm sorry," Trevor said, still too loud, still drawing stares. "I didn't mean anything by it. It's just, it must be hard." "What's hard?" Marcus said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet again. "Is dealing with people who think disability is a conversation starter. We were having a nice evening. You should go." Trevor's expression shifted, embarrassment mixing with anger. "Jesus, I was just trying to be nice." "Sensitive much?" Elena's hand touched Marcus's arm, a gentle pressure that said, "Let it go. Not worth it." But Marcus had spent 3 years watching people talk to Rachel like she was a child, because she couldn't respond verbally, had spent countless hours in hospitals where nurses spoke only to him, as if Rachel couldn't understand her own medical care. He was done letting it go. "Being nice would be treating her like a person instead of a problem," Marcus said. "Being nice would be not making assumptions about what's hard and what isn't. Being nice would be walking away right now before I make you leave." Trevor left, muttering something about people being too sensitive these days. The people around them pretended not to have heard, turning back to their conversations and wine glasses, the moment dissolving into awkward silence. Elena pulled Marcus aside into a quieter corner near a sculpture of twisted metal that looked like wings. "You didn't have to do that," she signed, her expression complicated. "I'm used to people like him." "I know," Marcus signed back, "but you shouldn't have to be, and I'm tired of watching people treat human dignity like it's optional." She looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for something he hoped she'd find. "Why did you really learn sign language?" "The truth. It wasn't just for your wife at the end, was it?" Marcus felt the weight of old secrets, the kind you carry so long they become part of your skeleton. My mother, he signed slowly. She lost her hearing when I was 12. Meningitis. Sudden, complete, devastating. My father couldn't handle it. He left within 6 months, said he couldn't live with the silence. I learned ASL because I refused to abandon her the way he did. Where is she now? Elena asked, her hands gentle. She died 2 years before I met Rachel. Heart attack. Quick. I'd just started a life where signing wasn't necessary anymore, and then Rachel got hurt, and suddenly it was necessary again. Sometimes I think the universe keeps putting deaf people in my life because I'm supposed to understand something about communication that most people miss. Elena's hands moved to his face, cupping his jaw with a tenderness that made his breath catch. Maybe the universe is just putting you exactly where you need to be. They left the gallery an hour later, Marcus driving through streets that gleamed with rain that had started while they were inside. Elena's hand rested on the center console between them, and Marcus covered it with his own, the gesture simple and profound. At a red light, she signed with her free hand. Can we go somewhere quiet? I want to talk without all the noise. Marcus drove to Riverside Park, the same park where he'd scattered Rachel's ashes 3 years ago. But tonight felt different, like he was claiming the space for new memories instead of haunting old ones. They walked along the path beside the water, street lamps creating pools of gold against the November dark. Marcus told Elena about Lily, really told her, about the nightmares and the therapy sessions and the way his daughter carried grief like a stone in her pocket, never putting it down but learning to live around its weight. I'd like to meet her, Elena signed, if you think she'd be okay with that. She's been asking about you every day, Marcus admitted. She wants to know if you like the same things her mother liked, if you drink your coffee the same way, if you'll disappear too. Elena stopped walking, her hands moving slow and certain. I can't promise I won't disappear. None of us can promise that. But I can promise I'll never lie to her, never pretend to be something I'm not, and never treat her fear like it's something she needs to hide. Marcus kissed her then, in the middle of the path with the river beside them and the city lights above them, kissed her like he was making a promise he intended to keep. Elena kissed him back, her hands moving to his hair, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling in a way that made the cold November night feel like summer. They saw each other 5 more times over the next 3 weeks. Coffee dates and museum visits and one memorable afternoon at a trampoline park where Elena proved she had better balance than Marcus, despite her vestibular challenges. They texted constantly, Elena sending him photos of her illustrations in progress, Marcus sending her videos of Lily practicing her signs. On Thanksgiving, Marcus invited Elena to his sister's house, and she came bearing homemade tamales and a willingness to endure Teresa's well-meaning interrogation. Lily took to Elena immediately, the way children do when they recognize someone who won't lie to them. They signed together in the corner while the adults watched football, Elena teaching Lily new signs, Lily teaching Elena the specific gestures she'd invented for her stuffed animals. At one point, Teresa pulled Marcus aside, her voice low. She's good for you, both of you. Don't mess this up. I'm trying not to, Marcus said, watching Elena laugh silently at something Lily had signed, her whole face bright with joy. December came with snow that made the city quiet in that specific way that felt holy. Marcus and Elena had been dating for 6 weeks when his phone rang at 2 a.m. on a Friday night, Jordan's number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus, man, I need help. Jordan's voice came through slurred and desperate. I did something stupid. I'm at county hospital. They're saying I might have alcohol poisoning. Can you come? Marcus looked at Elena sleeping beside him, her dark hair spread across the pillow, the hearing aids she'd removed before bed sitting in their case on the nightstand. They'd fallen asleep watching a movie with subtitles, her head on his chest, and Marcus had been happier than he'd been in years. Now his past was calling, asking for help it didn't deserve. He went anyway, because that's who he was. He kissed Elena awake, signed where he was going and why, and she nodded, already reaching for her phone. "I'll come with you," she signed, but Marcus shook his head. "Stay with Lily. Teresa had to work overnight. I'll be back before breakfast." The hospital was the same one where Rachel had spent her last year, and Marcus felt the familiar nausea of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell. He found Jordan in the ER, hooked up to an IV, looking small and pathetic in a way that should have generated sympathy, but instead just made Marcus tired. "Hey, man," Jordan said, his voice rough. "Thanks for coming. I know I don't deserve it." "You don't," Marcus agreed, pulling up a chair. "What happened?" "I've been drinking more since that night, the blind date night. I can't stop thinking about what we did, how we treated you, how we treated her. Devin won't even talk to me anymore. Says I've gotten mean when I drink. Maybe he's right." Marcus sat silent, letting Jordan fill the space with confessions that felt 3 years too late. "I saw your Facebook," Jordan continued. "You and Elena. You look happy, man, really happy, and I realized I haven't been happy in years. I've been angry and bitter and taking it out on everyone around me. That night, setting you two up like that, I thought it would make me feel better, make me feel like I had some control, but it just made me feel worse." "Good," Marcus said. "It should make you feel worse. What you did was cruel. We could have both left that restaurant feeling humiliated and broken. The only reason we didn't is because we chose to see each other instead of the joke you tried to make us." Jordan's eyes filled with tears, the kind that come with exhaustion and too much truth. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter, but I'm sorry." "It does matter," Marcus said, surprising himself. "It doesn't fix anything, but it matters. Do you want to get better, or do you want to keep drowning?" "I want to get better," Jordan whispered. "I don't know how." Marcus stayed with Jordan until sunrise, making calls to rehab facilities, talking to the hospital social worker, helping his former friend navigate the first steps toward actually changing instead of just apologizing. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was witnessing, which felt like what Rachel would have wanted him to do. He got back to his apartment at 7 a.m., finding Elena and Lily making pancakes, signing to each other and laughing. Elena had done Lily's hair in braids, and his daughter wore one of Elena's scarves around her neck like a cape. They looked like family, and Marcus felt his throat tighten with something that felt like hope and terror in equal measure. "Everything okay?" Elena signed, her expression concerned. "Yeah," Marcus said, then signed it too. "Everything's okay. Jordan's getting help. Finally." That night, after Lily was in bed, Marcus and Elena sat on the couch with tea and silence, the kind of comfortable quiet that doesn't need filling. "I've been thinking," Elena signed, "about that first night, about how your friends thought they were setting us both up for humiliation, about how they didn't understand that my deafness isn't a deficiency, it's just a different way of existing in the world." "They're learning," Marcus said, "slowly, badly, but learning." "I don't want to be someone's learning curve," Elena signed, her hands sharp with frustration. "I don't want to be the diversity hire in someone's conscience. I want to be chosen because I'm me, not because I'm deaf." "You are chosen because you're you," Marcus signed back. "The fact that you're deaf is just part of who you are, like the fact that I'm a widower, or that I work construction, or that I still can't cook worth a damn. It's information, not definition." Elena smiled, the tension leaving her shoulders. "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever signed to me." "I've got more," Marcus said, his hands moving slow and careful. "I love you, I love the way you move through the world with your head up even when people stare. I love the way you make Lily laugh. I love that you're teaching me there's no one right way to communicate. I love you and I'm terrified, but I'm done letting fear make my decisions. Elena kissed him, her hands moving to his face, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. I love you too, she signed. Even though you're a terrible cook, even though you work too much, even though you carry guilt that isn't yours to carry, I love you anyway. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, and Marcus dreamed of Rachel for the first time in months. In the dream, she was signing, her hands moving through words of permission and release, telling him it was okay to be happy, okay to love again, okay to build a life that didn't include her ghost in every room. He woke with tears on his face and Elena's hand in his, and he understood finally that grief and joy could exist in the same heart without canceling each other out. Christmas came with the specific magic that only happens when children believe. Lily made Elena a card covered in glitter and attempted ASL fingerspelling. Elena gave Lily a signed first edition of her newly published children's book, the one about the girl who could hear colors, dedicated to Lily, who taught me that love sounds like laughter. Marcus gave Elena a custom illustration portfolio, leather-bound and elegant, and she cried actual tears, signing thank you over and over until he had to kiss her quiet. On New Year's Eve, Marcus took Elena back to Rosie's diner, the place where their actual first date had happened after the disaster at Riverside Bistro. They ordered apple pie and terrible coffee, and Marcus pulled out a small box that made Elena's breath catch. This isn't a ring, Marcus signed quickly, watching relief and maybe disappointment cross her face in equal measure. Not yet. We've only been dating 4 months, and I have a daughter to think about, and I want to do this right. But this is a promise. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver bracelet with a single charm, 2 hands forming the sign for love in ASL. I promise to always see you, to always sign with you, to always choose communication over silence, and when I'm ready to ask the bigger question, I'll ask in the language that brought us together. Elena took the bracelet with shaking hands, letting Marcus fasten it around her wrist. I'll hold you to that, she signed. All of it, especially the part about doing it right. They kissed at midnight, surrounded by strangers counting down in voices Elena couldn't hear but could feel through the vibrations in the floor. Marcus held her close and thought about the strange path that had led them here, about cruel jokes that became unexpected gifts, about the way love could surprise you when you'd given up expecting it. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe. Tomorrow, I'll share another moment where silence spoke louder than words. Some people set up dates as jokes, never expecting them to become love stories. But the quietest skills often carry the loudest truths, and sometimes the hands that sign are the ones that heal what words break. The world is full of moments where someone chose to see instead of mock, to connect instead of laugh. Stay with me. There are more stories where understanding doesn't need sound, only willingness to learn a new way of listening.